word transmogrified from Calvin and Hobbes. Now, you may remember the comic strip by Bill Watterson, which ran from 1985 to 1995. Calvin, age 6, was part Christopher Robin and part Dennis the Menace, and his stuffed tiger Hobbes regularly came to life in Calvin's active and sometimes too mischievous for his own good imagination. Together, Calvin and Hobbes went on adventures around the universe and considered the big philosophical questions of the day, and occasionally annoyed the crap out of his neighbors and his exasperated parents. One day, Calvin built a transmogrifier. Now, to us and his family, it was just an upside-down cardboard box with a dial drawn on the side. But to Calvin and Hobbes, it was a machine that could turn them into whatever they wished to become. Eel, baboon, bug, dinosaur, tiger, toad, worm. While everyone else still saw a little boy and a stuffed tiger, Calvin and Hobbes saw themselves transmogrified or transformed in a surprising manner. I think sometimes we forget we can transmogrify things, especially in our religious communities. We often joke, because otherwise we would cry, about the 7 deadly words of the church, but we've always done it this way. And that can be about everything from how the coffee is made, to how the hymns are sung, to how we understand the principles and ethics of our faith. In fact, let's look at our principles for a moment. Pick up a hymnal. In the gray, it's about 8 pages in. In the teal, it's about 11 pages in. Okay, just like that. And there they are. Our principles, our organizing statements of who we are, and what we believe, what we affirm and promote. Nicely laid out in a list. We even tend to number them and quote them by number. Our 5th principle calls me to fight for responsible gun control legislation. I'm doing 3rd principle work and learning about Hinduism. I'm a 7th principle guy, so I invest in renewable energy. A nice, handy, step-by-step list. I mean, you could even do a 7-step program or right? Isolating each principle and focusing on them one at a time. Many congregations, maybe this one too, has experienced 7 Principles worship series. There they are, nice, neat, ordered, isolated. Each principle and individual. But that was bugging my colleague, the Reverend Ian Riddell. Ian wrote, I'm in a bad mood that our principles are in a list, so I transmogrified them. And this, with the help of Claire, this is what he devised. Whoa. Instead of an ordered list, we have a wheel. No numbered principles, but a rather different pattern of organization. A surprising way to see them. As you can see, I hope the center, the axle, is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's where we start, where everything else moves from. Then encompassing it at the rim is respect for the interdependent web of which we are all a part. Right? So from the individual to all. And the spokes are the other principles. The ways we understand our world and ourselves in the world, and the ways we act in the world because of who we are and whose we are. So, how does this work? How would we approach our faith, our work, our connection to other human beings, our sense of the divine, and even our connection to ourselves, if we were willing to transmogrify how we think of them? So let's start with this section. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, along pretty good. It's certainly the cornerstone of Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and of every social action we take, both within and outside of Unitarian Universalism. We take this call on faith, surely, as things all make sense and are all preached by the major religions, and, well, who doesn't want justice, equity, and compassion? As a bullet on the principles list, it's a positive and a big, of course. But there's something missing. You see, Unitarian Universalists are really good at questioning things, but we often forget to question what's underneath our own principles. They're written on the page literally, so there they are, set in stone, as it were. Often we ask, what? What do they mean? Or how? How do we affirm and promote them? But rarely do we ask why. Why are they important for us to affirm and promote? When we change how we see them, we suddenly have a way to question the why of our principles, to interrogate the deeper connections, to see the connection between individual and the world. So why is justice, equity, and compassion so important? Well, because if I as an individual am inherently worthy of dignity, then so must be every other individual. And if we're all connected, how can I be like the pigs, not in the true story, but in Orwell's Animal Farm, right? And say that some animals are more equal than others. How can I not see that the compassion I hope you'll show me might be worth showing to someone, make that everyone else? This principle calls us to be in that state of becoming just, equitable, and compassionate, because we are never just. But if we remember who we are and where we come from, we are always becoming more just. The justice, equity, and compassion we get from the world and see in the world helps us become more just to others and also ourselves. Now, I'll admit a little something here, a bit of my own theological struggle. You see, I don't always believe that the things I know are true apply to me. Right? In other words, it's sometimes easier to declare that the inherent worth and dignity of every person in this interdependent web of all existence means there must be justice, equity, and compassion for you and other people, but it's hard to accept that it's for me too. That I am as inherently worthy, so that justice, equity, and compassion should be for me. For you, of course. For everyone in the world who faces injustice, oppression, and hatred, of course. For me, it's all right, I'll just sit back. And when the principles are in a list, it's really easy to dismiss myself as not really part of it. It's easy to apply these things to the people I love, the congregations I connect with, the larger community. But this wheel, Ian's pesky new way of looking at things, well, it's not letting me off the hook. Instead, it's reminding me of what David Bumbaugh wrote. In this interconnected existence, the well-being of one cannot be separated from the well-being of the whole, that ultimately we all spring from the same source and journey to the same destiny. In other words, y'all can't grow into harmony with the divine without me, and I can't grow into harmony with the divine without you, nor all of us can't do it without each other. We're stuck with each other. That's a good thing. We aren't isolated. The poet John Donne famously wrote, "No man is an island." We're all part of what James Luther Adams called the brotherhood of man, but which I prefer to call the family of humanity. And it never fails. As soon as I say that phrase, I start singing, "We are family." Yeah. Right. Exactly. You're welcome. But it's this kind of questioning, asking the why of our principles, and seeing the deep human connection that matters. This is what led the organization that was known as Standing on the Side of Love to realize that the words of its name actually did not show compassion to every person, especially the person who cannot stand and finds it difficult to be included in the activities of an organization that insists on the metaphor of standing. Thus, the organization changed its name to Side with Love. And while they were making a shift, so too did composer Jason Shelton, who has officially changed the name and lyrics of his song, 1014 in the Teal Hymnal. You can turn to it. It was called Standing on the Side of Love. It is now answering the call of love. And I don't have permission to tell you to do this, but I would strongly encourage you all to take Sharpies and change the name, because Jason Shelton has said, change this. What is printed is wrong. And I have changed the song. And think about it. In changing those lyrics, the song becomes more active. It's no longer standing on the side of love. It's now answering the call of love, right? It's more active, more engaged in the work of the second principle. And so it is this connection from the individual to the collective and back again that helps us answer why. Why do we affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations? Because it's about me and it's about you, neither of which can stand alone, so it becomes about us. As Frederick Buechner famously said, it's the knowledge that there can never really be any peace and joy for me until there is peace and joy finally for you also. I think you can see how this works. So if we interrogate the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, it has a similar sense of connection. How can we have a world community without all the individuals? As Marjorie Bowens-Wheatley writes, if in recognizing the interdependence of all life we strive to build community, the strength we gather will be our own salvation. If we join spirits, the pain of our aloneness will be lessened, and that does matter. I think about the poem that Claire read, of the table blessing. It calls us to be thankful for the many hands that make a meal possible. The farmers that grew it, the workers who picked it, the truckers who transported it, the grocers and stock boys and cashiers who sold it, the cooks who prepared it, the waiters who served it. Our food comes from all over the world. We cannot know for sure where the orange I got in my Christmas stocking has been, or who handled it, but I know that there are more than just my sister who put it in my stocking. So how can I not want to affirm and promote a world community when that world community feeds me? And that's just one example. When we see ourselves as both individual and part of something bigger, we begin to see others the same way. That's not always easy. Sometimes we get too self-focused and just see every act and every word and every decision as just about ourselves. Or we get too outwardly focused and feel lost and used and burned out. Our transmogrified principles, looking the same on the outside but feeling new and different on the inside, reminds us that we are both and. So we can see how some of this might work. But how about some of the more individualistic principles, or those we think might be individualistic, like encouragement to spiritual growth? On one hand, yeah, it's about us, individuals. My spiritual path is not your spiritual path. And as we like to say, we need not think alike to love alike. In this room, I suspect we have Jews and Christians and atheists and pagans and who knows what else. But even this principle, a vital one to be sure, both benefits from the going out and coming in and strengthening both. It is your path, but this religious community encourages you to this path. The path you chose is modeled by others out there, those who have gone before, those who are going it now. Their wisdom informs you and yours. And here's the secret. Your wisdom informs theirs too. Why do we affirm and promote this? Why, of course, being the question that I seem to ask over and over. And I think the answer is in the fact that humans have been ritualizing in both solitary and communal ways since humans started doing rituals, and healthy spiritual exploration contains both. I like what Parker Palmer says about this. He writes, solitude does not necessarily mean living apart from others. Rather, it means never living apart from oneself. It is not about the absence of people. It is about being fully present to ourselves, whether or not we are with others. Community does not necessarily mean living face to face with others. Rather, it means never losing the awareness that we are connected to each other. It is not about the presence of other people. It is about being fully open to the reality of relationship, whether or not we are alone. And so on. Each principle connecting itself to the interdependent web and back again to the individual person in areas of truth, justice, community, connection, growth, process, and compassion. Leading us from the familiar list that says what, and to the transmogrified form that asks why. And once you see it, it can't be unseen. Now, you won't be able to think of our principles without thinking about the wheel and the spokes and the interconnectedness. We've transformed our way of thinking about it. We have transmogrified our principles, our ethics, and our faith. And maybe that's the real message. Not that we become something new overnight, but that we and our world and how we act in it is deeply and inexorably interconnected and interdependent. It's not just how we act outside these walls, but inside them too, how we are with each other. Some of us can be too inwardly focused or too outwardly focused, and we forget the gifts of both receiving and giving, love, compassion, energy, encouragement. Because when it all comes down to it, it really is just a circle. I invite you now to rise and body your spirit and sing hymn number 134, Our World is One World.